Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving you the updated stats for the Road to Nationals season, as well as doing a little tier list for the upcoming Pro Tour and maybe even Battle Hardened Philly, but more talking about the Pro Tour for the heavy hitter season. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're a long-standing supporter, thank you so much as always. We'll get right into it. Check out the Discord down below. Check out the channel membership. We're now at 17 channel members, which is insane. I'm going to announce the giveaways for the playmat and for the card this week. Just got to figure out the best ones to use, but we'll get right into it. So this week, we had some pretty good movement. So if you look on the right side of your screen over here, the top winner for week 3 was Dromai. Dromai had 14 wins, which was 16% and some change of the meta share. I always round my percentages up, so it might be a little bit different for you, but 16% of the meta share. KO, again, another strong showing. KO, honestly, when it comes to consistency, is the strongest hero in the game right now, getting 10 wins at 12%, their best week yet. And then it kind of trickled from there. We had Katsu get 7 wins, which was pretty awesome to see. And then we also had Azalea get 8 wins. So both of those heroes doing really good. We'll talk about why in a second when we get to the tier list portion. And then we had a bunch of heroes kind of tie. Kano, Victor, and Kasai all nabbed 6 wins. And then it went down from there. The next notable ones were Bolton at 4 wins and Dorinthia at 4 wins. The biggest surprise of the week is Bravo. So Bravo has 15 total wins right now. He got 6 wins in week 1, 7 wins in week 2, pretty consistent. And then it dropped all the way down to 2 wins in week 3. Now, I think that's confirmed. So I did my best to try to do the Bravo math. The first 2 graphics that LSS put out showed that Bravo had 6 wins and 7 wins. Then the third week, he was in the other heroes category, and so I added up his point totals, subtracted the Pro Tour invitational tournament from 20 points, and it got me to having 2 wins. So Bravo a total of 15 wins. But yeah, so the big winners were Jeremiah and KO. Obviously, I think they have now solidified themselves as the 2 best decks in the format, and we'll talk about that when we get to the tier list portion. And the other big winners were Katsu and Azalea, both kind of going up from their previous win totals. Katsu's gone from 4 wins to 5 wins to 7 wins, and Azalea's gone from 3 wins to 5 wins to 8 wins. So biggest one. And then the biggest loser was Bravo. Bravo going down to only 2 wins. And even Levia kind of going down a little bit as well. Levia had a really only 1 win week 1, rose all the way up to 7 wins week 2, and then back down to 2 wins. Same thing with Bolton. Went up from 1 to 8 to 4. So that's kind of how that's looking. When it comes to total wins over the whole season, Jeremiah is in first place right now with 28 wins. She had a huge week 3, which really propelled her into first. And then KO is at 27 wins. So these 2 heroes really are starting to separate themselves from the pack. And then we have Kano still doing really solid at 23 wins alongside Victor. And then we actually have Kasai, Katsu, and Azalea all tied with 16 wins each. And we'll kind of talk about that, why I think that's relevant here in a second when we get to the tier list portion. Then we have Bravo at 15 wins. So Bravo is starting to dip down a little bit, really close to Bolton. And then it rounds out from there. Dash, Dorinthia, Levia, Prism. 20 total heroes getting a win. The only heroes that did not get a win are Arachne, Betsy, Dash.io, Riptide, and Teklevossen. And I did my research, and with the exception of Dash.io, I know that Arachne had like 4 or 5 top 8s, just couldn't quite get an invite or a win. And then Teklevossen had several top 4s. Betsy had a top 4. Riptide had a couple top 4s. At Dash.io is the only one I didn't confirm, but pretty much every hero in the game, with the exception of maybe Arachne, had a top 4 placing. I think Arachne might have even had 1. So 240 total events. Jeremiah making 11% of the win share. KO making also 11%. And as we talked about from the June 2023 PQ season, where we had 3 heroes with over 15% of the win share, including 1 at 20%, this is a lot healthier, right? We basically have 4 heroes within 2% of each other, which is really, really nice to see. And then an additional, this is not correct because I haven't updated the Bravo wins, but we have, basically Bravo's sitting at around 5%-ish with some change, right? So 5% of the win total. So we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heroes within 1.5% of each other additionally. So, really, really good stats. And so where does that lead us, right? Like, how does this affect, the tier list and how the meta is perceived? Because we are starting to get 2 heroes that really are separating themselves from the pack. And that's where we get into the tier list, right? So we're going to go into the tier list. Let me switch my screen real fast. Okay. I did 4. This is more for Pro Tour, but also maybe could apply to Battle Hardened Philadelphia, because I think Battle Hardened Philadelphia is the first big event, obviously, with a slightly not solved meta, but understood meta when it comes to like knowing what decks are going to be represented. I have meta decks, counter decks, so counters to the meta decks, which is a really interesting pool here. We'll talk about that in a second. Specialist picks. I do think that this is the age of the specialist. I think that, honestly, if you're not playing Jeremiah or KO, just play the hero that you're most comfortable with. And try your best into your bad matchups and kind of go from there. And I'll talk about why Jeremiah and KO are, I think, better as well. And then I have a question mark here. This is basically the playing for passion section, where I think, it's a very small list, where I think that if you're playing this hero, you're playing it because you love the hero, not because you're trying to tech into something. So for meta decks, it's really simple. It's literally 2 heroes. It's KO and Jeremiah. They're side by side. Not one's better than the other. I think Jeremiah has a slightly better matchup spread than KO does, just because the common denominator with Jeremiah and KO, as opposed to other decks, is they don't have a bad matchup. KO does have one meta-relevant rough matchup in terms of Kasai. Can be rough if you don't play it right, but it's not unwinnable. Like, KO and Jeremiah's bad matchups are like 45-55 at the highest level. And then the difference is Jeremiah's good matchups are like auto wins, right? KO doesn't really have an auto win. Jeremiah has several auto wins, right? Teklevossen, auto win, unless they make a mistake. There's a couple other ones. Arachne, like maybe 75-25. Uziri, maybe 70-30. Kasai is really bad, like 65-35, Jeremiah has more like polarizing matchups, but neither one of them has, I would say, a bad matchup. And that's why they're the meta decks, and that's why you're seeing them rise to the top in terms of wins. Then you have the counter decks. So how do you counter these 2 heroes? That's the problem. They're both countered by different heroes. So let's talk about KO for a second. What counters KO? Technically Arachne, but Arachne is not good enough to do that. Kasai is really good at countering KO. Kasai can give KO some issues with the efficiency of blocks and with dynamo control style gameplay, really outlasting and outvaluing KO. KO can just hit the win button, right, with some crazy nutty turns. But for the most part, Kasai does really good in a KO. So that's a natural counter deck. The problem is Kasai is really bad in a Jeremiah, so it counters one deck and not the other. Really, really, you're going to notice a theme here. Uziri, another deck that can counter KO really, really well. The problem is Uziri is really bad in a Jeremiah. Again, not very good. There's really no true counter to Jeremiah. Another one, Azalea. Azalea is a really good counter deck right now, and while you saw some success from her in week 3, she really does really well in the KO, can stop him. Not as bad in a Jeremiah as Kasai and Uziri, but not great. It's like 50-50 at best, and I'm being generous. Then finally, in my opinion, Katsu. Katsu is a specialist pick. Katsu is honestly, not specialist pick, counter pick. In my opinion, if you can avoid Victor, and Victor's even winnable, in my opinion, Katsu is the biggest counter deck right now in the game because it's good into both of the meta heroes. It can beat KO. It can race KO. I think KO is favored, but not by a lot. But it can race KO down, give KO some issues if KO doesn't find his Blood Rush turns or his like multiple go wide turns. And it's very good into Jeremiah. So I personally think Katsu is the best counter deck, and that's not even me being biased. I'm very surprised people are down this hero. I mean, if we go back and we look really fast, Katsu has only gone up, having 4 wins in week 1, 5 wins in week 2, and 7 wins in week 3. Very consistent, very up there. The problem is you got to avoid Victor, right? And then you go into the Victor question, like where do we put Victor here? Victor's honestly like in between. He's like tier 1.5. He is not on the same level as, like if we added one more row below, right? This is honestly what it should be. Tier 1.5. Victor's down here. And I think Victor stays there because, again, if we look at the wins, it makes sense. Victor doesn't have he has a couple of weird matchups, but honestly, it's not as bad. But the problem with Victor is it's really hard to counter Victor. Victor's not great in the KO, which is the reason I think Victor's held back a little bit. And the Jeremiah matchup is not fun either. It's it's always the 90-90 matchup, right, with Guardian and Illusionist. So that's where Victor goes. The other one that I see being up there as a tier 1.5 pick, it's really difficult. I honestly have to put Kano there. Kano is a deck that I wouldn't want to take to Pro Tour. I'm not a Kano player, but just better players are going to be, they know Kano exists now, and they're going to be ready for it. And they're going to have AB, and I'm not saying that Kano can't win against a meta that is expecting it, but Kano is going to have more trouble. And in a multi-round tournament with a lot of CC against a lot of really talented players, you could have some issues, right? I would honestly put Kano in a specialist pick because you have to be really good on the hero. It's not going to be as represented. It's not a hero you can just pivot to and play. It doesn't work that way. So I'll probably put him in the specialist pick, but you could easily put him in tier 1.5. And then we have other stuff like Playing for Passion, pretty easy. Arachne, Betsy. I would not take either of these to Pro Tour as much as I love Arachne to death. Bolton is a specialist pick. Bolton's very good right now, but you have to know how to play into every single matchup, know when to play Raiden, know when to play Sabers. If you're on the Saber hot streak build, like knowing when to switch into full Sabers and knowing how to play in each matchup. Bolton kind of went down this week. I think if decks like Katsu and Azalea and even Kasai are very represented, Bolton starts to struggle because these two can race Bolton, and this one just does really good blocking Bolton, obviously. No attack actions or very little. So that can be an issue. Bravo is interesting. Bravo is not a Playing for Passion, right? I guess I have to put Bravo in specialist pick by default, but I think Victor's just better right now. Just straight up better. Like, gets more value, has better matchups. Bravo can just hit the win button, but if I'm picking between a Guardian right now, I'm just picking Victor. It's kind of like the issue that Katsu had back when Fi was really good, is that, Katsu was fine, it's just Fi was better, right? So, which I hate saying out loud myself, but that's how it is. Teklavos is Playing for Passion. Viserai is Playing for Passion. Let's just get the Playing for Passions out of the way. All these heroes can be played, but if you're playing them, you are simply a specialist of that hero. You love that hero, but you're also not playing to potentially win the event, in my opinion. That's all of these heroes. Viserai, Teklavos, and Riptide, and Set-IO. They just don't do well into the matchups right now. It's pretty simple, cut and dry. Specialist picks, again, Dorinthia is another one. I think a skilled Dorinthia knowing how to... Dorinthia is like the epitome of having to know how to play in every matchup. Most Flesh and Blood decks are like that, but Dorinthia especially. The deck just feels clunky as hell if you don't know how to play into whatever you're playing. I've tried Dorinthia before, and every time I'm like, this deck's bad. But then I see someone play the exact same deck, exact same matchup, and they do just fine, and I'm like, oh, they played completely different, the way I did not expect. So there's that one. Another one that I think is a specialist pick, and this is kind of the last specialist pick, in my opinion, is Levia. I think Levia is really weird. I wouldn't put Levia in tier 1.5. I just don't trust Levia in a 9-round CC tournament, or however many rounds, right? Like a big past RTN level CC. She's going to kill you one tournament. There's going to be one tournament, one round where you just die to yourself, and it sucks. And because of that, I do think she's at the top of specialist picks alongside Kano, maybe right behind Kano, but I'd still have her there until she proves that she can do super well at a big event like a Pro Tour. Dash, I know Dash did bad, and I think it's because of all the brute running around, but great Dash players are going to do great, and I still have her at tier 1.5. She's just really good. I think she's extremely undervalued right now, and I have her at 1.5. And then another counter deck I think is really good is Rhinar. Rhinar does pretty good in the KO. All right, the Intimidate factor, it's kind of just a race. Does pretty good in the Jeremiah. Can beat Jeremiah really well. Can struggle into Victor, but also can, if you play like the full beatdown list, it can just tell Victor, like, I don't care. You're not going to block me. Figure it out. And it can get really rough for Victor really fast. Does well in the dash. Now has the tools necessary to race aggro. I think it could be a really good counter pick going into the Pro Tour, personally. Olympia is the biggest question mark. Is that deck real? is the number one question. I think it actually is. I don't know if it's up here by any means, but the deck is playable. I would feel after watching Skill Pilots play that Axis deck, after playing it myself a couple games, it's playable. The only problem is it absolutely folds the Dromai. The winner of that event beat a Dromai in the finals, but if you hear him speak in his deck tech, he even said, I don't know how, I somehow won, right? He wasn't even expecting to win that matchup. And so Dromai sucks, but if you can avoid the Dromais, this deck's real. Fi is the biggest question mark for me. So if we go back and we look at how Fi's been doing in the Road to National season, as soon as I can find Fi, 4 total wins, 1 win, 2 wins, and then 1 win. Not really that good. I think the deck still has legs, but honestly, I have to put it in Playing for Passion. It's just it's not performing like at all. And right now, Katsu is just hands down a better ninja. It's not even close. Like they used to be like tit for tat. Fi was better than some things. Katsu is better than some things. Blah blah blah. No, now it's 100% Katsu's the better ninja. It's just how it is. And then finally, Prism. I put Prism at the top of Specialist. I think Prism could be really interesting going into this Pro Tour. I think talented Prism players could pull it out. It kind of has the same issue that Leviah does, where your deck's just going to screw you 1 or 2 rounds, which could feel bad. It has an extremely high skill ceiling. But these 3 decks are like the best Specialist decks, Leviah, Kano, and Prism. And these are the 3 decks that like. If I saw one of these 3 in the top 8, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be like, okay, that hero has the capability of doing that. That's kind of where I have it. Actually, if I wanted to sort them correctly, it'd be like this. For counter decks, I have them sorted like, probably like this. And then tier 1.5 and meta decks. That's kind of where I have it. This is mainly Pro Tour speak, but it can apply to the Battle Hardened as well. But I think the one thing that's not arguable is just these 2 are the best decks right now. They don't have necessarily bad matchups. They have pretty even matchup spreads. They have very favorable matchups. It's hard to tech into them because when you tech into one, you're bad into the other, typically, with the exception of maybe Katsu and Azalea. I think Katsu and Azalea are the 2 most poised decks to do really well in the Pro Tour. I'm excited to see what they do. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are down below. I'd love to hear it. This is just my initial thoughts after, 3 weeks of the RTN season. Definitely give me your comments, agreeing or disagreeing down below. But yeah, thank you all so much. Hopefully you'll have a great rest of your week. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed this. If not, it's totally fine. Go to another creator, whether it's Alpha Clash or Flesh and Blood. Get more people seeing card games, getting in stores, playing. And I'll see y'all next time on TCG Talk. Thank y'all so much.